Welcome everybody to this video presentation of mine. There's an asteroid coming toward the Earth, and I'm not telling you this to scare you or anything, but because I think this asteroid, it's not something we have to worry about. It's going to hit the Earth. In fact, it's going to go by it. But it is a sign, and it's interesting. This thing is called Apophis, and it'll buzz the Earth 1,260 days from Halloween, October 31st, 2025, until when it arrives Friday the 13th, 2029. And I was kind of interested in the timing, this thing, 1,260 days, because that's a significant number in terms of the tribulation. It's halfway through the tribulation. And so I'd like to look at some of these signs and what they may represent. Now, what's interesting is this, like this star, this asteroid, it's 1,260 days from Halloween to Friday the 13th, 2029. And those are kind of like, we would call them demonic feast days, maybe, or demonic days. Everybody's worried about Friday the 13th, something bad might happen. Or on Halloween, where people are dressed up as goblins, and it's laughed off. But here's 2 days that seems to be kind of unusual if you had these 1,260 days, because Jesus said to his disciples once, when they had been out preaching the gospel, they had 70 of them, and they were casting out demons. He said, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. And he's talking about a sign, something that could be visible. Now, yes, Satan had been disarmed, like Jesus said, but and he's been rendered powerless, but he is still in heaven until the middle of the week. And that's so this was just the beginning of his fall. But there's a future fall yet. We see this in Revelation 12:9. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. And this is really Satan's work right now. As he's in heaven, he's able to deceive. And so the world, they don't believe the gospel anymore, because their eyes are blinded by the God of this world. And even as Christians, we can be deceived. And so this is part of his work right now. But in the middle of the week, he's going to be thrown out. We see that Michael and his angels fight against the devil and his angels, and they're cast out. 2 Thessalonians talks about this, where we have the Antichrist. We know about that, but we wonder, what's the relationship between him and Satan? Well, here it is. Satan is cast out in the middle of the week, but he's thrown into the Antichrist. He enters just as Judas. Satan entered him, and he went and betrayed Jesus. Well, here this guy is maybe he's gonna appear to be a Christian even, and then when Satan enters into him, then he shows his true colors. And it says, and then shall that wicked be revealed, talking about the Antichrist, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all powers and signs and lying wonders. Here it is, all power and signs and lying wonders. This word coming is the word parousia. It's often used of the second coming of Christ, like in Matthew 24, 31, and in 2 Thessalonians 2:1. But here it's used of Satan at the end, as coming in the person of the Antichrist. And these lying wonders, this is how you know the Antichrist, because Satan will have entered him, and that's where he gets his power from. You know, interesting things. There's a lot of signs in the sun. You know, these eclipses. This is an eclipse of the sun, which was, I believe, 2025 March, end of March, but off North America, and I don't know, like, if I seen that, you know, it would kind of give me an idea of, you know, the devil's horns. And I wonder why God would be showing us these things. And I think it's because, you know, Satan is about to be cast out. And God's warning the earth and America and all of us, you know, that this is coming. And it's closer than you think. You know, interesting, we see this woman in Revelation 12:6 that she flees into the wilderness. She flees from the serpent, where she has a place prepared for her, and she's fed for 1,260 days, it says. And you know, this has got to be the last half of the tribulation. But, you know, while Satan is on the earth. And we see this in Matthew 24, and pray that your flight, he's talking to the 12 disciples, pray that your flight will not be in the winter on the Sabbath day, for then there will be a great tribulation, such as not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever will. So this hasn't happened, this great tribulation. And it is connected with the fall of Satan, him being cast out. Here we have another picture of it in Revelation 8:10. It says, and a third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were as a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of the water. As soon as you see it fell, it fell. This reminds me of what Jesus predicts. I saw Satan fall from heaven. And so this is exactly what it is. And so this asteroid that we're talking about could very well be a sign, you know, like the horns on the sun. Now I will show wonders or signs in the heavens and on the earth, blood and fire and columns of smoke. And I think, you know, we've had fires, lots of fires. And when you get fires, then the light of the moon becomes blood. You know, there is a blood moon caused by the eclipse of the moon, but there's also blood in the sun and moon because of the fires and smoke. And Jesus says, and there will be signs in the sun. We just looked at them. And in the moon, there's blood moons. And in the stars, these asteroids. You know, what? I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven. You know, could this Apophis be a heavenly sign that we're approaching that time? Now, Satan will only have a short time to cause havoc. 3.5 years. We see this in Revelation 12:14. But the two wings of a great eagle were given to the woman so that she could fly into the wilderness to her place where she was nourished for a time, times, and half a time from the presence of the serpent. So here we have this from the presence of the serpent. Now, I think this is probably in Israel because, you know, if Satan is cast down into the Antichrist, well, where's the Antichrist? He's going to be in Israel. He's going to enter the temple. So she's going to flee from the presence of the serpent. And it says, woe to the earth and for the sea, because the devil has come down having great anger, knowing he is a short time. And we see in Daniel 12 there, talks about the devil will go forth, or the Antichrist, the king of the north, with great wrath, knowing, you know, to do away with many. And so this is a great tribulation. We don't know when the start of the tribulation is, because if we did, then we could add 7 years and we'd know exactly when Christ would return. But Jesus says no one knows the day or the hour. So this is something that we're not in darkness, but we don't know the exact date. But we do know the Bible gives us 7-year period before Christ's return. This 7-year, which we call tribulation. The last half of it is the Great Tribulation. The early part of it is still part of this 7-year period, but it's not as severe. In Daniel 9:27, it says he will confirm a covenant with the many for 7 years. And then Judges, and the Lord delivered them, the Israelites, into the hands of Midian for 7 years. And some see this as part of this Abraham Accords, that Israel is joining up with these many Arab nations in some kind of an agreement, not a good one. God says, don't make any covenants with the nations around you. And that's what they're doing. And that's what God, the Lord at that time, delivered Israel, because they were, not listening to him. And then in Genesis, Joseph said, for the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there's yet 5 years in which there will neither be plowing or harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve you a remnant in the earth, to keep you alive by a great deliverance. Well, Joseph is a type of Christ. He was, abandoned by his brothers, sent to Egypt, where he became second only to Pharaoh, like Christ, seated at the right hand. And during this famine, this final 7-year period, he ends up delivering Israel by a great deliverance. And so this is, but Jesus says, work while it is day, for the night's coming when no man can work, and no plowing nor harvesting. And I believe that's what we're going to have in this last 3.5 years, when Antichrist, when Satan takes his rule for these 3.5 years inside the Antichrist. Well, then they're going to stop all Christianity. It's going to be illegal. And so, for 3.5 years, it's going to be tough for all of us. But God delivered the woman by finding a place for her to be nourished. And, he looked after, in Joseph's time, he looked after the Israelites, brought them down to Egypt where they were fed. And so God always has a way out for his people, and that we can survive. If we're not raptured, well, then God will provide whatever we need. And Satan's wrath is going to come, but it's only his anger, and we can endure it. That's what Luther's song says, his rage we can endure, for lo, his doom is sure. So, it's not for us to be giving up hope if we're not raptured. In fact, it's making a stand for him and being lights in the world. So what are we to do? Well, Habakkuk says, in this same time, the just shall live by faith. And that's really it. The just shall live by his faith. We have faith in Jesus. He died and rose again. Jesus paid for our debt, our sins, and he has given us eternal life. And so whether we die or live, we're going to be with the Lord. But if you haven't trusted Jesus, today is the day. Now is the acceptable time. If today you'll hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. Jesus says, here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in to eat with that person and they with me. And in the betrothal, when the bridegroom was going to ask the bride to be his wife, he would go to her place and knock on the door. If she opened the door and let him in, then that was consent, that she accepted the offer of marriage. And that marriage would happen after a betrothal period. And so it is with us as, Jesus is knocking at the door of our lives, and he wants to come in. And so if we want to accept him and come into the new covenant, then we have to receive Christ. John 1:12, but as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, to those who believe in his name. And so that's what we have to do. I'm wondering, have you done that? And that's how we are ready for when the bridegroom comes. So I hope you've done that. I hope you enjoyed this video. God bless.